Dorian was my second love, the one that changed everything. Had I not experienced life with him, I wouldn't be the woman I am today. Before him, I didn't know exactly what I wanted in a relationship. I was insecure, constantly seeking validation, and looking for someone to fill the void I felt inside. But being with Dorian forced me to confront parts of myself I'd been avoiding for years. When I was first introduced to Dorian, I was still dating someone else. Funny enough, our mutual friends didn't think my boyfriend at the time was right for me. They kept telling me to hang out with them, knowing Dorian would be there. They insisted we should get to know each other, and they clearly had their reasons. I didn't see it at the time, though. Dorian didn't make much of an impression on me initially. He seemed like a decent guy, cool and easygoing, but that was it. I didn't feel the sparks my friends were hyping up. Because we worked together, I ended up seeing Dorian more frequently. Over time, we spent more time together and built a connection, though I didn't realize how fast it was growing. I began to appreciate his humor, his quirks, and how comfortable I felt around him. Little by little, I found myself thinking about him more than I should, given that I had a boyfriend. And then one day, I couldn't ignore the feelings any longer. I broke up with my boyfriend, and Dorian and I officially became a couple. Our relationship, though intense and passionate, wasn't perfect. We loved each other deeply, but we both had a lot of growing up to do emotionally. The insecurities we each carried began to seep into our relationship, chipping away at the bond we had created. I was insecure, worried about my worth and whether I was enough for him. And he, too, had his insecurities, though he masked them by being withdrawn and, at times, distant. He didn't know how to express his emotions, so instead of sharing his fears and vulnerabilities with me, he projected them in ways that hurt us both. I wasn't innocent in this either. I kept parts of my past hidden from him because I was scared he would judge me. I was terrified that he wouldn't accept me for who I truly was, so I kept some things to myself. This lack of transparency on my part, coupled with his inability to open up, began creating cracks in our relationship. What was once a strong connection slowly became fragile. It all came to a head on New Year's Day. We had been together for almost 4 years, and we had this big talk about starting fresh in the new year. We spoke about our future and the things we wanted to change, the ways we could improve our relationship. It was one of those heart-to-heart conversations that felt promising. I thought this would be the start of a new chapter for us. I felt safe enough, for the first time, to share something about my past that I'd kept from him. I thought he'd understand, that he would be there for me, offering his love and support. But instead, the conversation took a turn I wasn't expecting. He blew up. He couldn't handle what I had to say, and instead of working through it with me, he ended the relationship right then and there. Just like that, my world came crashing down. Losing my best friend and partner on the first day of the year wasn't how I imagined things would go. New Year's Day is supposed to be filled with hope and joy, maybe a little bit of a hangover from the night before, but certainly not heartbreak. The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever faced. I felt completely lost, like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Dorian had been my rock. He was the person I leaned on during tough times. He had seen me at my worst, particularly when it came to my mental health. I've struggled with high-functioning depression and panic disorder for years, and he was the only one who had seen me have panic attacks. He was the only one who tried to help me through them. Without him, I felt like I had nobody left to turn to. That's when I remembered therapy. I'd been seeing a therapist on and off for a while, but after the breakup, I knew I needed to go back. The first few sessions were rough. All I could talk about was Dorian, our relationship, the breakup. I was stuck in this cycle of grief, unable to let go of what we had or what I thought we had. But slowly, my therapist helped me shift the focus away from him and back onto me. We started talking about my feelings, my insecurities, and why I had been so deeply attached to him in the first place. The most important thing I learned in therapy was that my love for Dorian, while real, had come from a place of self-doubt. I didn't believe I was enough on my own, so I unconsciously relied on him to fill in the gaps. I was looking to him to fix the parts of me that I didn't like, instead of doing the work myself. But that's not how love works. You can't expect someone else to complete you. You have to be whole on your own before you can fully love someone else. The second big lesson I learned was that things only start to get better when you decide that they will. For months after the breakup, I felt stuck. I was mourning the loss of Dorian and what our future could have been. But once I made the choice to focus on healing, things began to shift. I started to see the situation more clearly. I could step back and look at the bigger picture, and when I did, I realized something important. As much as I had loved Dorian, I was better off without him. The distance from the relationship allowed me to grow in ways I never expected. I became more self-aware, more confident in who I was and what I wanted. I realized that Dorian wasn't the right person for me, and that was okay. He had come into my life for a reason, to teach me important lessons about myself and about love, but he wasn't meant to stay. Now, looking back, I can see that breaking up with Dorian was a blessing in disguise. It was painful, yes, but it forced me to grow. It made me face the parts of myself that I had been avoiding. I had to learn how to stand on my own 2 feet, how to be comfortable with who I am, flaws and all. And most importantly, I had to learn that love isn't about finding someone to fix you. It's about finding someone who complements the person you already are. Dorian was my second love, and as hard as that relationship was, I'm grateful for it. It changed me. It made me stronger, more resilient, and more sure of myself. And now I know that when the right person comes along, the person who will be my third love, I'll be ready. I'll be whole. And I won't need them to fill any voids, because I've finally learned how to do that for myself.